Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Facebook Live hosted by the Presbyterian Outlook. I'm Teri McDowell Ott, the editor of the Outlook, and I am here to have a live conversation with members of the special committee to write a new confession for the Presbyterian Church USA. We have Edwin Aponte, who is the executive dean of Drew University's Theological School in Madison, New Jersey, and also a member of Mid Kentucky Presbytery. They have a lot of pastor members, I think, don't they? And also Martha Moore Kish, who is a professor of theology at Columbia Theological Seminary and a member of Greater Atlanta Presbytery. We may also be joined soon by Margaret Amer, who's the Vice President for Academic Affairs and Academic Dean at Austin Theological Seminary. And Margaret may be having some tech trouble. We're not sure. So we will watch for her and welcome her as she arrives. So this is I'm just going to say, this feels like a daunting task to me. And I want to, there were 3 overtures to the 2022 General Assembly that led to the establishment of your committee to write a new confession. And these overtures called on the PCUSA to write a new confession that, and I'm going to quote some lines from the overtures, that speaks directly to the North American situation, to address oppressive theological anthropologies that reduce the humanity of those deemed other, to reject that which seeks to divide Christ's body, to reject the abuse of power in any form. And sort of a summary of this is you're being asked to name what is a threat to the gospel today. So as I said, this feels like a daunting task. You've got a committee of 16 people. As one who doesn't like to group write, I'd really love for you to talk to me about your process. How did you begin? How did you structure your time together? And then where are you now in the process?
Mm-hmm. Edwin,
sure. Well, I'd start. And first of all, let me say that my colleagues here in New Jersey, I've transferred into the Presbytery of the Highlands of New Jersey. So we want to make
sure. They need to claim you.
That's and Presbytery meetings on Tuesday, so I'm good now.
Okay. Check.
So we were invited individually by the previous co-moderators to serve on this, and to say that this feels daunting. It really was. Yeah. And of course, we all 16 of us said yes to serve the wider church. And it was really hard. We are a diverse group of people, as anyone could see on the list of the 16 of us from across the denomination, across the nation, all kinds of different backgrounds. And part of the dauntingness of it, if that's a word, was how can we talk together? And so we, ahead of what was the anticipated schedule, we got together as quickly as we could in October of 2023 online. And then later we were able to gather in Austin, hosted by Austin Presbyterian Seminary. And we were committed to this and to take seriously the overtures and work it through. And we covenanted together to be as open and as transparent as we could be with each other. And we had some difficult conversations along the way, but because of that commitment to the calling, the shared calling on this task and to the work, I think we, at least the 16 of us, have come out at a good place. And we are near the end of the process. We're going to have a full plenary meeting of the committee later on today, but we also worked online via Zoom. And all these meetings were recorded and available, and we had conversations and also occasionally in person, and we were grateful for that. And we are at a point where we are willing to submit a report to General Assembly coming up that will include a draft confession. So maybe I'll just pause there.
Yeah, yeah. Could I just add on to that,
Yeah.
Teri? Yeah, I mean, I think what Edwin is describing is really important, because I think it gives you a little window into how the first stage of our process really was just trying to get to know each other and build trust and build common understanding and build a common grasp of what our task was. I mean, a big part of the first year of our meeting was, okay, what is it to write a confession, right? There's no rule book for this. There's no template for how you go about doing this. The last time this was done was after reunion, right, in 1983. And so the brief statement of faith, adopted in 91, was the last time this was done. And that was a very different time in our country's life, a different time in our denominational life. The occasion was very different. And so to think about, well, what is it that we're called to do, and what is it that it means not just to name the problems, right? Not just to list the things that we're concerned about, but to say, what is the theological heart of the matter? And that was, I think, something that took it just takes time to try to get to that. But it feels like in the past year, we have really gotten some momentum to the point that, as Edwin said, we have a draft of a document that we're going to send to General Assembly.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I noted you had a February 15 deadline, and it's February 12, so I'm going to ask about that in a second. But would you describe your committee members as theologically diverse?
Great question. Edwin, how would you answer that? I mean, I would say yes. And, within the context of the Presbyterian Church USA.
Sure.
But yes, to be sure. And as Edwin mentioned, I mean, we did have some very honest and hard conversations and about differences of understanding with regard to some basic questions of the faith, but it is I think a testimony to the hard work of our conversations over time that those differences have not been dividing in terms of what we can confess together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I got a text that Edwin's having some sound problems.
I see that too. Yes.
Yeah. So Martha, you're just going to have to answer every question now.
Oh my gosh.
Just you and me.
I will welcome Edwin and Margaret when they're able
when they're there. But I'm actually curious too, because you have a Korean speaking member. Oh, good. That's Margaret.
We do. Oh, hooray, Margaret.
So much trouble getting my camera on. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. We're so glad you made it.
And I heard a lot of this was beautiful. Thanks. Great job, Martha. You're carrying it. You're doing great.
I'm just so glad you're here. Just so glad you're here. Yeah, Teri, you were about to say.
I'm curious about how, because I watched one of your videos and you have a Korean speaking member. Can you remind me of his name?
Byung-il Kim.
Yes.
Reverend Byung-il Kim.
And so how does it work? I mean, do you all have something in your ear that you're hearing, or is it what? It's a magic.
Margaret can explain that.
It's the magic of Zoom.
Yeah.
So there is actually a function in Zoom called interpretation.
Oh.
And so the interpreters can be placed on one channel. And then the participants in Zoom can choose either English or Korean. So Reverend Kim can speak in Korean. And the interpreters can hear him in Korean, and they interpret him in real time. They're quite remarkable. They can listen and interpret at the same time. And then we hear it in English.
Yeah. And then in person, on the occasions when we've met in person, we have the translators also there in person. And it functions basically the same way. Reverend Kim has something then in his ear, and so he's hearing them, and they're hearing it, and so yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But it is a commitment. It is a commitment, and
that's and it's fantastic to have that voice on your committee too. So, and as I've listened to the conversation around writing a new confession, a question does arise about whether this is a confessional moment, and I know there's a difference between a confession and a declaration. But I've heard, some would argue that we have Barmen, we have Belhar, we have Confession of 67, and the Brief Statement of Faith. Do we need another one if those speak to the contemporary moment? And have you discussed that as a committee? I imagine you have. Yes. And I'd love to know how have you answered that question, and what do y'all think? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Margaret, I think at the heart of each of the confessions, you're responding to something that is a status confessionis, right? That is a place in which the gospel is at risk. And so before we could write the confession, we first had to be able to name where is the gospel at risk, and how is that different from the way we name it in Belhar and Barmen, and even in the Brief Statement of Faith, 67. Here, instead of naming specific issues like racism or sexism or homophobia or ecology or any of the multiple things that came to us from the TWEs that the General Assembly said to us, the Spirit led us to name idolatry of power and money. It's at the heart of all of those things.
Yeah.
And it was from that nub that the rest of it spirals out. And so Barman gets at some of it, Belhar gets at some of it, but the nub of it for us is really how does this idolatry then play out in our history and in the way that we are interacting with each other today, and specifically in our the ways we're falling short of loving God and loving neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah, it really did. It feels to me like a year ago when we met in Austin last February, and we came to that kind of theological realization, to be able to name that as the issue from which so many of these things that we observe in terms of oppression and othering follow as symptoms, right? But to get to that heart, I think we all could say, oh my goodness, yes, that's it. And we don't have a confession that names that particular thing, right? The 16th century confessions, many of them talk about idolatry in really important ways, but it was a different moment. And to be able to name the idolatry of money and power as the root of so much of what we're seeing right now felt significant and new in terms of our confessional tradition and to the moment that we are in right now.
Yeah. Right. Wow. To the moment, and I think as a committee we were helped by the insight from Belhar that the times that we are in compels this cry from the heart. And so that really, when we were together last in Austin, that particular meeting, it was like everything that we had been working together in previous in-person meetings on Zoom, it all coalesced and gave the committee clarity about the next stage going forward.
Wow.
Right. And not simply the moment as in 2026.
Right.
But the moment as in the last 50, 70, 100, 250 years of the United States of America and the participation of the Presbyterian Church therein and our participation going forward in the midst of the climate emergency and all of the other things going on. Because we understand that the process of this confession is, we're probably 8 to 10 years out, even if this passes General Assembly.
Right.
Before this becomes a confession of the church. So we didn't want to write something that was relevant for 2026
alone.
We wanted to write something that was true and would continue to be true.
Yeah. I read that. I think it's in some reported articles about your work that, I mean, because the challenge of this is the language is very important. You know, it can't exactly use contemporary language of today because it needs to be a timeless piece, right?
Right. Yeah. And we had conversations. We have continued to have conversations as we've written and edited and wordsmithed, particularly the past 6 months. And, you know, and several times I can think of when we said, okay, is this word going to have the same resonance in 10 years? Right. Yes. Or is this too time bound? We don't want to use jargon or language that is so contemporary that it's going to be out the window, you know, 10 years down the road.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's exactly right. It's a tricky thing to speak to something in the moment and not just for this moment.
Yeah.
And what made it even more challenging for us is that we were also committed to, can we craft something that could be used in worship?
Right.
Right.
How can that shape the language as well? And not just worship in English.
Right.
How will this sound in Korean, in Spanish?
Exactly.
That's beautiful. I do have, and I have a little, I think I have your nut graph. There's a little paragraph. It was included in an article reported on that I wanted to, it's about the, what you're talking about, the power and the money, that I'd like to read. Tell me, and I hope this is from you. It's from a PNS article. So
From us.
it says, sort of in an answer, what is the central threat to the gospel in this moment? It is the heretical worship of power and money, and its concentration among the few, and idolatry that equates money and power with the divine and the will of God. Maintaining this concentration of power and money requires the domination of others. Systems of oppression are upheld by lies, by othering, and through persecution and violence aimed at producing fear and disempowerment.
Yep.
Is that in the draft?
No, not exactly that language, but all of that substance.
That was the clarity your committee received, right? After that in-person meeting. Was it in Louisville?
We had 2 in Austin and 1 in Louisville. So this was the second meeting in Austin.
Okay.
A year ago.
Teri, you should know that, you know this about me, but the rest of the church may not know. I became a widow in 24. And the committee graciously decided to move the Louisville meeting to Austin. So I could be present because I'm now a single parent and could not take time off with my child. So
definitely our condolences to you, Margaret.
It's the second meeting in Austin.
Okay. And it sounds like your committee is full of gracious servants.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I know you had this deadline, February 15 deadline. And you say you've sent a draft to be considered by this General Assembly. Can you tell us more about the draft? Like what's in it, or describe it?
I'll say that there are 2 parts. There are 2 parts, right?
Okay.
There's the report,
yes,
that describes our process, much like what we've been talking about, and what led to this, right, and how we got to the point of writing. And then there is the draft itself. Edwin has already mentioned that we sought to write it in liturgical language, and so it's about 7.5 pages, but that's not prose, right? It's I don't know what the word count is at the moment. Do you all know? Anyway, but that's the length of it. If you can imagine that on a page. So it's longer than the brief statement, maybe closer to the length of Barman, but in a different format, something like that.
Okay.
I don't know, Margaret and Edwin, what would you say about that? What else should we say about that?
Well, so the format was inspired by the prayer at the table, the communion prayer.
Oh, good. Okay.
So you have the beginning part of the confession, which speaks to God's gracious acts in the world and how God has formed us and what God has called us to do and be.
Yeah.
And then the second portion attends to the question of the idolatry that we named already, but in more fulsome language.
Okay.
And also liturgical language.
Mm.
And then the third portion talks about God's faithfulness to us despite our own sinfulness.
Mm.
Fourth section speaks about where we are called to be and do, and who we are called to be in light of this.
Yeah.
Very much like a liturgical prayer at table.
Yeah. Right. Like a great prayer of Thanksgiving.
Exactly.
Exactly was the structure.
That's
and
great.
exactly, and if I could add to that, another piece that is a major theme from the beginning to the end is the affirmation that we are made in the image of God, who is love.
Right.
And that to be made in the image of God means that we are made to reflect God's love for God, for one another, for the neighbor, for the stranger, and that when we the crux of our idolatry is that we forget who we are. We turn away from who we are made to be, which is to love others and to love God, right? To be made in God's image. And so that language of the image of God, which actually was important for one of the TWEs that originally came to General Assembly, ended up being an important theme all the way through in terms of naming the good news, as well as helping us to diagnose the problem.
Oh, that's great.
And we spent a lot of time on the image and likeness of God.
Yes.
Thanks to Jack Aber.
Oh, okay, good.
That's true.
Yeah. People should know Jack's on the committee.
Jack's on the committee.
That's right. And well,
and I also want to name that the three major writers of the confession are Martha Moore-Kish, Jess Cook, and Magdalene McLaren.
Oh, great. Okay.
They have done the huge work of putting the draft together, which then the committee responds to.
Okay.
You can't write a confession as a group of 16.
Right.
Thank you to Columbia Seminary for Martha's sabbatical.
Oh,
grateful.
Is that why they gave
her to
you
be
a
one of the
sabbatical?
lead writers on the confession.
Oh,
Well,
I want to shout out our sister school, and I want to shout out our colleague for her leadership in this.
Yes,
thank
indeed.
you. Thank you. And thank you. And I was grateful that the sabbatical came at a time that permitted me to do some of that work along with Jess and Magdalene. And I do want to say, I don't know if we said this at the outset, I think it's really important to recognize that Margaret and Edwin here are the two co-chairs of the committee.
yes.
And maybe we said that and I just missed it, but I just wanted to acknowledge that, and they are both full-time overworked deans of theological institutions and still trying to carry the weight of co-chairing this committee. So.
I am familiar with the weight of that role. Yes.
Yes, you are.
That is a busy job. You all, this is fantastic. We only have a few more minutes, and I want to get to, talk a little about process. You've submitted a draft, and this is to the commissioners of this GA to vote on. So I imagine, is that draft, would it be made public, or is it only for commissioners to look at?
We're just on the cusp of submitting both the draft of the confession, this draft confession, and its accompanying report. And someone else has to speak to the procedure going forward.
I see.
We'll finish its work in the submission. I understand that this is going to be part of the docket at General Assembly. And as co-moderators of the special committee, Margaret and I will be present to. Is there any questions about it? But the particulars, someone has to speak to that, and when the draft would be available for others, a wider audience.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think, Margaret, you may know better than I, but my sense is that once it's submitted to the General Assembly, it is public. I mean,
Right.
it is and actually we want it to be discussed, right? I think the committee is eager for this to become something that we talk about as a church, and that we get some feedback. And what'll happen in June is that there will be a committee at General Assembly that'll talk about it, and then it'll come to the floor, and that the General Assembly will vote whether or not to send it on to the next stage, which is a committee of 15. And the committee of 15 is a separate committee appointed by the new co-moderators, whoever they are. It may or may not include any of us. That is for them to determine. But it's another committee that does its work for 2 years, not to rewrite, but to consider what has been written and to decide whether or not to recommend it. That's my understanding.
That's correct,
Margaret. Yeah,
that's my understanding too. And then that committee would bring it to the following General Assembly. If they recommend it, they would go to a committee of the General Assembly, and then to the General Assembly for the preliminary vote, which I believe has to be 2/3 because it's a change to the Constitution.
Right.
And then it needs to pass 2/3 of the presbytery. So again, we're not talking about something hasty.
No.
This by the time, if this document that we have written becomes approved, we would hope it will have been discussed and studied by the church.
Exactly.
That's great. And so your work as a committee, I mean, you've been doing this for 4 years, correct?
Well,
about three.
And you're finishing up, you're letting your baby go. so to speak. I don't know if I need to ask you how you feel about that, but and then the church continues to do the work of discernment about the draft that you submitted. So that's it. Before we end our time, because I know there's more questions in the chat, but there are more. I want Jesse Littlejohn is going to post the link to the webpage where people can see all the names of all the members of your committee, the 16 members. That's on the webpage. There's videos to the live stream meetings that you all have been having on the webpage. And then there's some extra PDF resources. And we're not sure how to disseminate those, but it's about the committee again and the overtures to the 2022 General Assembly. But we'll direct people to that webpage for some more information. And I imagine if people have questions, can they reach out to y'all?
Sure.
Please. Okay. Please. Yeah. And I think especially, between now and General Assembly, I think we'd be happy to talk with people who are preparing to be commissioners, for example.
Yeah.
But also afterwards, if there are presbyteries, churches, synods that are interested in having conversation, I think I'll speak for myself. I suspect many of us, including Margaret and Edwin, as we're able, would be glad to be facilitators of that conversation, because it is in all of our interests for this to be discussed.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. That's fantastic. We've got 1 minute. Is there anything else you would like people to know about this process, about the draft you're putting forward?
We wanted a confession that would be true regardless of who was in political power. We wanted a confession that would reflect an underlying and deep-seated reality of what it is to be Presbyterian Christians in the United States of America. And we have attended to some of the national concerns of race, of gender, and so on. But there has been and continues to be, especially in the majority church, an underlying queasiness to talk openly about money and power. I think we wanted to write a confession to honor the work of the TWEs that came before us, and that encouraged us, but also that spoke to and answered them by saying, this is what you're pointing to. This is what you're naming. So from having a college student on the committee to having somebody who is indigenous on the committee, someone who's Korean on the committee, someone who is 2 people that are transgender on the committee, people that are ruling elders, people that are teaching elders, people with PhDs, people who are just starting out their work careers, having the entirety of the United States. We had people on the committee across the spectrum of the Palestinian issue. We didn't name any of those things specifically because fundamentally we didn't want to name any one political issue. We wanted to speak to who we are as a whole and what we could say regardless of who was in political power.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Jason Polgar asked the question, are there theological conservatives on the committee? And the answer is yes.
Yes. And I also, if I could just say, I've just been scrolling through and looking at the comments in the chat, and I'm really grateful and sorry that we don't have time to engage all of them. All I would say is to the concerns about adding yet another confession. I understand that, and I share it. And I think that there does need to be conversation about how we use the Book of Confessions. This is not intended in any way to replace or diminish any of the prior confessions. It's simply to say that as a church, we are called to say something now that has not been said before. In addition to, and we hope in deep conversation with the confessions that have come before us, including the 16th century confessions, which are big on condemning idolatry. But we're thinking about, well, what does it mean to do that today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you all so much for your time and your work on behalf of the church for all of us. It is a daunting task, and you all have worked so hard. So really grateful for the chance to have a conversation. And clearly we had a lot of people participating in the chat. You may get calls after this, emails. But honored to host you all, and blessings on your work as you move forward. So
sorry again about my technical difficulties.
No worries.
I was glad to be here.
We've all been there, Margaret. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
As well.